We rarely suffer because of events. We suffer because of people we refuse to walk away from. Not every enemy attacks openly. Some sit beside us, laugh with us, call themselves friends, smile while slowly draining our strength. Pain does not always come from strangers. Often, it comes from those we trusted most. So we learn to see clearly, not with anger, not with hatred, but with disciplined awareness, with a mind that observes, understands, and refuses illusion, because clarity is power, and boundaries are survival. Here are 10 types of people we must never tolerate. 1. The manipulator. They twist your emotions to control your choices. They rarely shout. They rarely threaten. They smile. They listen. They make you feel understood until you slowly realize that every conversation leads exactly where they wanted to go. The manipulator does not force you. They guide you. They plant ideas in your mind and wait for you to believe they were your own. They use guilt as a weapon, silence as punishment, and affection as currency. When you resist, they become victims. When you question, they become offended. When you set boundaries, they accuse you of being selfish, cold, ungrateful. And slowly, almost invisibly, you begin to doubt yourself. Your instincts feel unreliable. Your emotions feel dangerous. Your voice feels smaller. The true danger of the manipulator is not what they do to you openly, but what they make you do to yourself. You start explaining their behavior, defending their actions, adjusting your values to keep their approval. But clarity changes everything. We learn to observe patterns, not promises. We learn that love without respect is control in disguise. We learn that anyone who needs your confusion to maintain power does not deserve your loyalty. So we step back. We detach. We reclaim our emotional sovereignty. Because the moment we stop being controllable, the manipulator loses their power. And in that moment, we begin to rise. 2. The constant victim. They never take responsibility. They drown you in their chaos. Nothing is ever their fault. Every failure has an excuse. Every mistake has a villain. Every consequence has someone else to blame. To them, life is a battlefield where they are always wounded and never accountable. At first, we feel compassion. We listen. We support. We try to help them stand when they claim they cannot walk alone. But slowly, we realize something unsettling. Their pain is not a season. It is an identity. They do not seek solutions. They seek attention. They do not want growth. They want sympathy. They do not want responsibility. They want rescuers. And if you become their rescuer, you will pay a hidden price. They pull you into their emotional storms. They make you feel guilty for their failures. They make you responsible for their happiness. Their chaos becomes your burden. Their stagnation becomes your prison. When you encourage them to change, they feel attacked. When you offer truth, they call it cruelty. When you step back, they accuse you of abandonment. The constant victim fears one thing above all else: the moment they must face themselves. So we learn to see clearly. We learn that empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. We learn that not every wounded person wants healing. Some want an audience. We learn that you cannot save someone who refuses to save themselves. And so, we choose distance without hatred. We choose clarity without cruelty. We choose responsibility over emotional slavery. Because the moment we stop carrying their pain, we begin to carry our own destiny. 3. The silent competitor. They envy your growth while pretending to support it. They clap when you win. They smile when you succeed. They say, "I'm happy for you." But something in their voice feels hollow. Something in their eyes feels cold. The silent competitor is not your obvious rival. They do not challenge you openly. They do not attack you directly. They stand beside you, close enough to observe every step of your progress. They measure themselves against your journey. Your achievements become their private torment. Your discipline becomes a mirror they cannot escape. Your evolution reminds them of the life they refuse to build, so they compete quietly. They downplay your success. They highlight your mistakes. They offer advice that subtly limits your ambition. They disguise discouragement as realism. Don't aim too high. Be practical. People like us don't usually reach that level. They call it concern. But beneath it lies fear. A fear that if you rise too far, they will be left behind. The silent competitor does not want you to fail. They want you to stay within reach, close enough to compare, small enough to feel superior, safe enough to not threaten their identity. And if you are not careful, their quiet influence can shape your choices. You start shrinking your dreams. You start explaining your ambition. You start dimming your light to preserve their comfort. But awareness changes everything. We learn that true support never feels threatened by our growth. We learn that real allies celebrate progress without conditions. We learn that anyone who needs your stagnation to feel secure is not walking the same path. So we rise without apology. We grow without permission. We move forward without waiting for their approval. Because the moment we stop competing with their insecurities, we begin competing with our potential. And in that moment, we become unstoppable. 4. The gaslighter. They make you doubt your reality. Their weapon is not noise. It is subtlety. They do not attack directly. They distort quietly. A casual remark, a gentle correction, a smile that feels warm but hides something sharp. The gaslighter never looks dangerous. They look reasonable, calm, concerned. They speak as if they are helping you, as if they understand you better than you understand yourself. They rewrite moments. They deny conversations. They twist facts until truth feels unstable. You're imagining things that never happened. You're too emotional. At first, you hesitate. You replay events in your mind. You question your memory. You doubt your instincts. Slowly, your confidence begins to erode. You start apologizing for feelings that were valid. You start explaining thoughts that were clear. You start shrinking your voice to avoid conflict. And this is where their power grows. The gaslighter thrives in ambiguity. They need you uncertain. If you are unsure, they are in control. If you doubt yourself, they become your authority. When you finally confront them, they shift roles. They become the victim. They accuse you of being unfair. They paint you as irrational, aggressive, ungrateful. They make you feel guilty for seeking clarity. But awareness breaks the spell. We learn that confusion is not normal. We learn that constant self-doubt is not humility. It is a warning. We learn that truth does not need manipulation to survive, so we return to ourselves. We listen to our inner voice again. We document reality. We trust patterns, not excuses. We set boundaries that cannot be negotiated. We stop arguing with distortion. We stop seeking validation from those who benefit from our confusion. Because the moment we reclaim our perception, the gaslighter loses their grip, and in that moment, we realize something powerful. Anyone who needs you to doubt yourself is terrified of the clarity you carry. So we stand firm, clear-minded, unshaken, uncontrolled. And from that clarity, true freedom begins. 5. The energy drainer. Every conversation leaves you exhausted. They don't attack you. They consume you. They enter your life quietly, not as enemies, but as people who always need something. Attention, reassurance, validation, rescue. At first, you feel compassion. You listen. You support. You give advice. You try to help. But the pattern never ends. Every conversation becomes heavy. Every interaction becomes a burden. They talk endlessly about their problems, their fears, their disappointments. They never ask how you are. They never notice your silence. They never see your fatigue. The energy drainer is not evil. They are unconscious. They live in a constant state of emotional hunger. And without realizing it, they turn you into their emotional battery. You begin to feel it in subtle ways. You dread their messages. You delay responding. You feel tired before the conversation even begins. Your mind becomes crowded with their chaos. Your time disappears into their struggles. Your emotional space becomes smaller and smaller. And slowly, you start losing connection with yourself. The danger is not their problems. The danger is your unlimited availability. Because when you give endlessly without boundaries, you teach people that your energy is free. But awareness changes everything. We learn that empathy without limits becomes self-destruction. We learn that not every problem is ours to solve. We learn that silence can be a form of self-respect. So we redefine compassion. We listen without drowning. We care without sacrificing ourselves. We help without abandoning our inner balance. We set boundaries without guilt. We choose distance without hatred. We protect our energy without apology. Because our energy is not infinite, our focus is not limitless. Our life is not a public resource. And the moment we stop feeding emotional vampires, we feel something unfamiliar yet powerful. Lightness, clarity, strength. From that strength, we realize a truth that changes everything. Anyone who drains your energy is not entitled to your presence. So we rise, calm, centered, unreachable by chaos. And in that calm, we finally hear our own voice again. 6. The opportunist. They appear only when they need something. They are absent when you struggle, silent when you fall, invisible when you fight alone. But the moment you rise, they return. With smiles, with compliments, with sudden interest in your life. The opportunist is not openly hostile. They are strategic. They study your progress from a distance. They calculate when your success becomes useful to them. When you are weak, they vanish. When you are strong, they approach. They speak the language of friendship, but their loyalty has conditions. They ask for favors disguised as conversations. They praise you just enough to keep access open. They call you brother, sister, partner, but disappear when you need real support. At first, you may not notice. You excuse their absence. You justify their behavior. You tell yourself that everyone is busy. But patterns reveal truth. You realize they never show up unless there is something to gain. Your time becomes the resource. Your skills become their tools. Your connections become their shortcuts. They don't see you as a person. They see you as an opportunity. And if you refuse them, their kindness evaporates. Their tone changes. Their respect fades. They make you feel guilty for saying no. They remind you of what they did for you, even when they did almost nothing. But awareness changes everything. We learn that real relationships are not transactional. We learn that genuine people stay when there is nothing to gain. We learn that those who only appear in moments of advantage were never truly present. So we adjust our boundaries. We stop explaining our refusals. We stop rewarding conditional loyalty. We stop investing energy in people who see us as instruments. We choose clarity over comfort. We choose dignity over approval. Because the moment we stop being useful, the opportunist leaves, and in their absence, we gain something far more valuable: peace, self-respect, and the certainty that those who remain are not attracted to our success, but committed to our existence. 7. The chronic critic. Nothing you do is ever enough. They rarely celebrate your victories. They rarely acknowledge your effort. Instead, they point out what you missed, what you could have done better, what still isn't good enough. The chronic critic does not always shout. Often, they speak calmly, with the tone of someone who claims to be helping. I'm just being honest. I want you to improve. You could do better. At first, Their words sound reasonable, even constructive. So you listen, you adjust, you push yourself harder. But the finish line keeps moving. When you reach one goal, they raise another standard. When you fix one flaw, they expose 10 more. Your progress is never complete in their eyes. Slowly, their voice becomes part of your mind. You start criticizing yourself before they do. You feel restless even after success. You feel guilty for resting. You feel ashamed for being proud. And that is their hidden power. The chronic critic does not want your growth. They want your dependence. If you are never enough, you will always seek their approval. If you doubt your worth, they become your judge. Sometimes their criticism comes from insecurity, sometimes from envy, sometimes from a need to feel superior, but the result is the same. Your spirit becomes smaller, but awareness changes everything. We learn that improvement does not require humiliation. We learn that guidance does not need cruelty. We learn that true support recognizes effort, not just flaws. So we reclaim our inner voice. We separate feedback from contempt. We accept wisdom without absorbing poison. We listen selectively, not submissively. We stop living under impossible standards. We stop begging for validation. We stop shrinking ourselves to satisfy someone else's expectations. Because growth is not measured by the approval of critics. It is measured by alignment with our own values. And the moment we stop trying to impress the chronic critic, we feel something liberating. Freedom. Freedom to grow without fear. Freedom to succeed without guilt. Freedom to exist without constant judgment. In that freedom, we realize a quiet truth. Anyone who can never see your worth has lost the right to define it. So we rise, not to prove them wrong, but to prove ourselves right. 8. The boundary breaker. They disrespect limits and call it love. They cross lines with a smile. They invade your space with excuses. They ignore your no and reinterpret it as hesitation. I'm just trying to help. If you really cared, you wouldn't say no. You're too sensitive. The boundary breaker does not see limits as sacred. They see them as obstacles to overcome. They believe closeness gives them permission. They believe affection erases consent. At first, their behavior feels flattering. Their attention feels intense. Their presence feels powerful. But slowly, intensity becomes suffocation. They decide for you. They speak for you. They demand access to your time, your emotions, your choices. They treat your privacy as betrayal. They treat your independence as rejection. When you try to protect your space, they accuse you of being cold, selfish, ungrateful. They twist love into obligation. They turn care into control. They make you feel guilty for defending yourself. And that is the trap. The boundary breaker thrives on confusion. If love has no limits, then domination can disguise itself as devotion. If kindness has no structure, then manipulation can pretend to be intimacy. Slowly, you begin to doubt yourself. You ask permission for things that were once natural. You explain decisions that were never theirs to judge. You feel anxious when you choose yourself. But awareness changes everything. We learn that real love does not erase boundaries. It respects them. We learn that closeness without consent is not connection. It is invasion. We learn that anyone who cannot accept your limits does not truly respect your existence. So we redefine love. We say no without apology. We draw lines without fear. We protect our space without hatred. We understand that boundaries are not walls. They are doors with rules. We stop negotiating our dignity. We stop sacrificing peace to avoid conflict. We stop mistaking pressure for passion. Because the moment we honor our limits, we reclaim our power. And in that power, we realize a truth that reshapes everything. Anyone who calls your boundaries selfish is benefiting from your silence. So we stand firm, unmoved, uncompromising, clear. And from that clarity, we build relationships that do not imprison us, but free us. 9. The false loyalist. They stand with you until it costs them something. They promise support. They speak of unity. They say, "I'm always on your side," when everything is easy. They are close. When nothing is at risk, they are loud in their loyalty. But loyalty is not tested in comfort. It is tested in pressure. The false loyalist disappears when stakes rise. When conflict appears, they choose silence. When you are attacked, they choose neutrality. When standing with you requires courage, they suddenly become busy, distant, uncertain. They avoid confrontation. They avoid responsibility. They avoid consequences. And when you ask where they were, they offer explanations instead of presence. "I didn't want drama. I didn't want to get involved. I had my own problems." Their words sound reasonable, but their absence speaks louder. The false loyalist wants the benefits of closeness, without the burden of commitment. They enjoy your friendship, your trust, your warmth, but only when it is convenient. They want to be associated with your success, but not with your struggles. They want your victories, but not your battles. Slowly, you begin to see the pattern. When you need them most, they are nowhere. When you recover alone, they return as if nothing happened. And that realization hurts more than betrayal, because the false loyalist is not an enemy. They are someone you believed in, someone you defended, someone you trusted with your vulnerability. But awareness changes everything. We learn that loyalty is not words, it is action. We learn that silence in critical moments is a decision, not an accident. We learn that those who vanish when it matters were never truly standing with us. So we redefine loyalty. We stop measuring relationships by promises. We measure them by presence. We stop clinging to people who choose safety over solidarity. We stop excusing absence with empathy. We understand that real allies may be few, but they are visible when it matters most. Because the moment we stop expecting loyalty from the wrong people, we free ourselves from disappointment. And in that freedom, we discover a powerful truth. Anyone who stands with you only when it is easy will never stand with you when it is necessary. So we move forward, selective, awake, unattached to illusions. And in that clarity, we build alliances not on comfort, but on courage. 10. The person who enjoys your weakness. They feel powerful when you feel small. They do not always insult you openly. Sometimes they encourage your doubts. Sometimes they smile when you struggle. Sometimes they offer comfort that secretly reinforces your fear. They watch your vulnerability with quiet satisfaction. Your hesitation becomes their advantage. Your confusion becomes their entertainment. Your insecurity becomes their stage. When you fail, they feel relieved. When you doubt yourself, they feel superior. When you hesitate, they feel in control. They never want you completely broken, just broken enough to remain beneath them. They disguise cruelty as humor. They mock your dreams under the label of jokes. They highlight your mistakes in public, then act supportive in private. And slowly, their behavior reshapes your self-image. You start shrinking your voice. You start hiding your ambitions. You start minimizing your achievements. You start believing that your strength is dangerous and your confidence is arrogance. That is their victory. Because the person who enjoys your weakness does not fear your pain, they fear your potential. Your growth threatens their identity. Your independence threatens their relevance. Your confidence threatens their illusion of superiority. So they keep you uncertain, dependent, emotionally smaller than you truly are. But awareness changes everything. We learn that anyone who delights in our insecurity is not a friend, not a partner, not an ally. They are a silent opponent. We learn that compassion does not require submission. We learn that humility does not require self-erasure. So we rise. We stop explaining our dreams. We stop apologizing for our strength. We stop seeking approval from those who benefit from our doubt. We rebuild our self-image from within. We surround ourselves with people who celebrate growth, not weakness. Because the moment we reclaim our confidence, their power disappears. And in that moment, we realize a truth that changes everything. Anyone who needs you to feel small is terrified of how big you could become. So we stand tall, unashamed, unbroken, unreachable by their insecurity. And from that height, we see clearly. Our weakness was never real. It was only the illusion they needed. To feel strong, be honest with yourself. Which type of toxic person do you recognize most in your life right now? Is it someone close to you? Someone you trusted? Someone you've been afraid to let go of? And ask yourself something even harder. What would happen if you finally walked away? If you chose peace over attachment, clarity over comfort, self-respect over fear, would you lose them? Or finally find yourself? Comment your truth. Your answer might be the first step toward your freedom.